of a deck list. You've got it right in front of you, actually. And he's got 2 forests in his deck, some Strangleroot guys, and some Boros Reckoners.
Yeah, he's he is playing the exact same deck he top-rated with yesterday. It's Naya aggro. It's more of a zoo build almost. Pretty exciting. It's got Experiment 1s, Dryad Militants, Strangleroot Geists, Voice of Resurgences, and curves all the way up to Advent of the Worm.
Yeah, Advent of the Worm, pretty spicy in this deck list. It's obviously, you know, the high end. He only has 2 copies. But the deck can really pack a lot of aggression, and its creatures are all very durable between, you know, the Voices, the Strangleroot Geists. Obviously, Lux and Smiter's just kind of hard to kill. And his deck is really good at evolving Experiment 1, too.
Right, so we saw yesterday with Aaron Barich, he made top 8, he went 8-1-1 yesterday with the deck, and he ended up losing in the top 8 to a red-green aggro deck, but for the most part, waded through a sea of junk decks to get to the top 8.
Yeah, it seemed like the red-green aggro deck was really not what he wanted to be paired up against. He leans really heavily on his Shockland mana base to cast his spells on time, and it's very easy to stumble when you're trying to cast Strangleroot Geist and Boros Reckoner at the same time.
Absolutely.
Not difficult. And the red-green aggro deck's
well, if you just draw
Fire Fist
Stomping
Strikers
Grounds
just-
all the time, it's great.
Well,
But
yeah,
outside of that, can be a
it's
little difficult.
It's pretty sweet.
Interesting enough, so what Joe Bass, when you're looking at the 4-color Reanimator deck, he has essentially taken what you'd think of as a normal junk deck, but instead of playing Restoration Angels, and he has decided to play Boros Reckoners. He's dipped into red for Reckoners, Sire of Insanity, and instead of any mana creatures, he's running Faithless Lootings.
Yeah, he's also got, you know, a little bit of that combo finish we talked about from the Aristocrats, in that he's incorporated Blasphemous Axe, and he also has Harvest Pyres, which can work nicely with Mulch and Grizzly Salvage. You can really get to a lethal Harvest Pyre and Boros Reckoner out of nowhere pretty frequently, and even if you can't do that, you can just use it as a reasonable removal spell against an early creature. It's probably really nice as a solution to Olivia Voldaren, which typically Reanimator decks can really struggle with.
Yeah, so both players keeping on their 7 here. Aaron's going to start out with a both Temple Garden, and Joe Bass with a Godless Shrine, both into play tapped.
I've actually played Joe Bass's deck a little bit on Moto, and it starts with tap lands a lot.
Yeah, so Joe Bass's deck is not his own creation, is what you're saying, or it is?
It won a standard premiere about 5 days ago, I think, and yeah, it's been popping up a lot since then.
All right, so the first play of the game that we see is a Luxodon Smiter from Aaron Barich. He managed to do so with only taking 2 damage, I believe, off a Temple Garden. And Harvest Pyre will get met by a Searing Spear.
Boros Reckoner.
Boros Reckoner will get met by a Searing Spear. No creature for it to kill, so the 3 damage just goes back at Aaron's face.
Yep. Joe mulches into Faithless Looting, Angel of Serenity, Blasphemous Act, Grizzly Salvage. Only the Faithless Looting and Serenity really valuable there, but he has an Unbearer Rights already in his hand.
Right, so the Unbearer Rights in hand will give him the option of making that Angel of Serenity very early in the game. What do you think about the fact here that, you know, Aaron in the first 3 turns of the game was only able to put 1 creature on the battlefield?
Yeah, it seems like he had a bit of a slow hand. Perhaps, you know, maybe he didn't know exactly what was going on with Joe. I would be inclined to keep his hand in the dark a lot of the time. You see now he's holding on to Advent of the Worm. He's planning to flash that down.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you started playing a bit in block or playing with Advent, that, you know, 4 lands in play untapped. Typically the read is Restoration Angel, but now you have to be aware that also can read into Advent of the Worm.
This is a
and
spicy salvage.
Yeah, we see a Grizzly Salvage unstepped by Joe, or sorry, main phase by Joe, correct? And it comes into Lingering Souls, Unburial Rights, Thragtusk, 2 lands. A lot of cards that like to be in the graveyard.
Yeah, yep. He's you know, not going to be able to flashback that Lingering Souls unless he takes some Shockland damage this turn. It looks like he's going to go for that, or he's going to flashback Faithless Looting, one of the 2. Lingering Souls it is.
And then we see the Telltale Advent of the Worm from Aaron Barich.
That is, you know, threatening to get really dangerous. I believe Joe is just straight up now dead to Gorklan Rampager, which we can see in Aaron's hand.
Aaron does have. So was this an avoidable situation? You know, Joe, I don't think realized just how close he was dead. You know, the end step, Advent of the Worm, untapped Gorklan Rampager.
Yep.
You know,
I think there wasn't really a thing for him to do in this spot. Like, he just was dead because he missed that 5th land to Unbearer Rights Angel of Serenity. Had he gotten there, however, you know, could have been a different story.
All right, and Barich is going to go ahead with the Gorklan Rampager, so that's 13 power of trample, only 2 toughness of blockers. They'll trample over for 11, and game 1 quickly goes to Aaron Barich and his Naya aggro deck.
Well, it was a little slow to start, but he put it together with some just big, heavy hits. I imagine that's kind of how this Naya aggro deck functions. You know, if you miss the little drops, you've still got just big creatures that hit really hard.
So you look at, you know, he ended up dealing 21 damage there. It was, what, 4 off, 8 off, or the first 4 off a Luxodon Smiter. Then there was 5 off an Advent of the Worm, 4 more off a Gore Clan Rampager, so that makes 13. 3 more trampling on a Smiter, and then just some shock lands that Joe had to play.
Yep.
So really, he didn't even have to connect very many times with his creatures.
Well, it's pretty easy to kill someone in like 3 hits when your creatures roll 4 power or more. Moving on to sideboarding, let's see what Joe's got. Joe's got in store. His sideboard's built a little bit more for the Naya Blitz matchup as opposed to this one. So things like Electrickery are going to stay at home, whereas in that matchup it's insane.
Yeah, when you look at Aaron's deck and Electrickery, he is playing 4 Dryad Militants and 4 Experiment ones. Experiment one 50-50 on whether or not an Electrickery hits it. Outside of that, it could kill a Strangleroot Geist. That's not exactly what you want to be doing.
Yeah, Abrupt Decay seems like a card I would be interested in playing. It kills Worm tokens, it kills Loxodon Smiter, it kills opposing Reckoners. Can't really argue with bringing in those.
You have to think that Abrupt Decay, Blasphemous Act, and Olivia Voldaren will all be sided in. They're great ways to kill or otherwise control creatures, and Aaron is playing a creature deck.
What do you think he boards out? I think the Sires are probably coming out.
Yeah, Sire in this matchup's basically just a 6/4. I mean, if everything's going according to plan to Aaron, he won't have any cards in hand by turn 6.
The most awkward part is that even if it isn't, the Sire actually tangos, not very well against Aaron's deck. He has multiple creatures that can block and kill it, or attack into it and kill it.
6/4 is not particularly big. It trades with Aaron's 3 drops.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. The Sires are definitely coming out. Maybe a few of the slower graveyard enablers too, although that can be kind of a hairy spot to put yourself in. Yeah, makes your Harvest Pyres worse. Makes a lot of things worse.
Right. So I mean, obviously the cards you care about are the Boros Reckoners and the Thrag Tusks. Outside of that, yeah, you probably will cut down on some graveyard spells. The 2-mana ones you don't always have time to cast. It does make parts of your deck less streamlined, but I think in this matchup, Joe just wants to make sure he can jam as many of those life gain or anti-aggro cards that he can.
Sure.
On Aaron's side, he does not have very much graveyard hate at all. In fact, he doesn't have graveyard hate. His sideboard consists of Pacifism, Volcanic Strength, Boros Charm, Ray of Revelation, Skullcrack, and Mizium Mortars. Of these, I'm not sure how many sides in, possibly Volcanic Strength. Joe is playing a red deck, because his junk deck essentially is splashing for red. That will make some creatures unblockable. And we do know that Joe's a Lingering Souls deck, so that could give Aaron a little bit of extra reach.
Yeah, I like the Volcanic Strengths. I could also see Aaron perhaps being tempted to bring in the Boros Charms. He did see a Blasphemous Act at the graveyard, so he knows that's a thing that can happen to him. But his deck's relatively resilient to it already. If he has a Reckoner in play, obviously it's pretty hard to cast a Blasphemous Act. If he has, Strangleroot Geist, Voice of Resurgence, not that big a deal to cast a Blasphemous Act, so it's possible he'll stay away, but I could also see him being incentivized to bring in, one, maybe both copies.
Yeah. Unlike the Naya Blitz matchup, Blasphemous Act is not always castable here. Aaron, as we saw there, won with only ever having 2 creatures in play. Yeah. And actually, at sorcery speed, he only ever had 1 creature in play. Joe never had an opportunity to cast an act on the Advent of the Worm.
He may also, I don't think he'll bring in anything else looking at it. Maybe he wants a little bit more reach. He's not maybe sure what Joe's playing. If he thinks Joe's on a more conventional Reanimator deck, perhaps he gets interested in those pacifisms. But I don't really think so. I think that the Volcanic Strengths for sure, the Boros Charms might be tempting.
Yeah. I mean, the question is of how much you like Boros Charm. Remember, Aaron has 2 in the main, 2 in the board. So, eventually you have to start thinking, how many Boros Charms do I want to have? And, whether or not they're in the main or board, wherever they started doesn't really matter. You have to kind of decide, is this a matchup I want it or where I don't want it?
Makes sense. Looks like Aaron knew exactly what he wanted. He finished sideboarding very quickly. Joe finishing up shuffling.
All right. So Joe down 1 game. Remember, the winner of this match will be in the top 8 for the tournament. The loser of this match probably will still only be 1 win away from top 8. So.
Yeah.
Both players with 2 chances here to lock up a spot.
Boros Reckoner quickly off the top, along with a pair of Advent the Worms, an Experiment 1. I don't see any lands over Aaron's hand. Looks like he's waiting for Joe to mulligan before he throws his back.
Right.
Yep.
Absolutely.
No mulligan from Joe. He's keeping. I saw at least a Godless Shrine. I can see a Godless Shrine, a Blood Crypt. Looks like he's quickly sorted some spells around.
Right. I mean, with Joe's hand, really, as long as he, because he has so much card advantage from these Faithless Lootings and from the Faithless Looting Mulch interaction, he can afford to keep hands, like his mulligans, he can recoup his card advantage very easily from his mulligans. Whereas Aaron, each mulligan really just takes him down a step.
That's some of the power of the Reanimator deck. Chris Van Meter, who won the Somerset Standard Open with Reanimator, the more traditional junk build, of course. He actually won a mulligan to 4 in the top 8 against Max Tietz, who was playing Jund. An attrition matchup.
Yeah, was just able to mulch his way back up to enough cards.
I believe his 4 cards was like land, mulch, something else, and that was all.
And
that was
4.
all she wrote. Yeah.
That's excellent. So I believe 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, both players mulled to 6. I believe Aaron's actually on a 5 right here.
Did Joe mulligan?
Yeah, I think they both mulliganed initially, and Aaron's on a double mulligan, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I may have missed that.
So Aaron on his first draw, drawing, a turn late to the party, he draws his Experiment 1.
Yep.
Yeah, both players, they're on 5 and 6 cards, respectively.
Okay. Voice of Resurgence for Aaron?
So yeah, he's...
foil? My gosh, man.
Yeah, so Aaron skips the opportunity to evolve his Experiment 1 because he wants to be more efficient with the Voice of Resurgence, which seems like probably the correct play to make here.
Yeah.
He's making up for lost time. And Joe hits his 3rd land. He has all his colors online. He has cast Lingering Souls on turn 3. Also now has his Reckoner mana enabled.
He decided not to. He attacked last year. He should play the Experiment 1 and then attack with the Voice of Resurgence, I think. Because that makes Joe actually make a decision about whether that Experiment 1 gets to evolve or not. And then post-combat, he doesn't really lose anything. But instead he's giving Joe all the information here,
Well, the
right?
idea here is that then if Joe double blocks the token will evolve Experiment 1
yeah,
a second
sure, it'll evolve
time.
it again. But that's what I'm saying. It gives Joe the full information.
Right, so he should play Experiment 1 post-combat, you'd said?
I think I think he leads with Experiment 1, then post-combat Voice.
But then it only evolves Experiment 1 to a 2/2.
Sure, but he's not going to block this way. That's what I'm saying. You can't make Joe just do it wrong.
Okay. So you're saying he wants the block to happen?
I kind of think he did, yeah. I think having a 3/3 on the board would just be a lot better. So perhaps incentivizing that block from Joe.
So we see a flashback on Lingering Souls from Joe Bass.
Sends everything. Blocks up on the voices. This could get hairy.
Here's some strength of Voice of Resurgence. Both the voices are going to die, be replaced with XX tokens, currently at 3. That will evolve Experiment 1 to a 3/3.
Yep.
You see, in his hand, Joe does have an Abrupt Decay. It appears he also has a Thrag Tusk. He is missing his 5th mana.
A common problem for Joe, it seems.
And there he goes.
Unbury Rights on Angel of Serenity?
Yeah, that's strongly preferred to casting Thrag Tusk.
Yeah.
He's going to take care of Aaron's entire board.
Well, obviously that's why his Lingering Souls were so quick to block on that turn, whereas before they had been a little reluctant. Yeah.
Right. So he's going to have Boros Reckoner with Rancor on it from Aaron Barich. That makes it a 5/3. Still not able to tangle with the Angel.
Yep.
And Aaron now...
It's any bigger, though.
Aaron now with only 1 card left in his hand. Joe on 5 lands.
Joe decides to attack. Aaron has to feel like that's bad for him.
Yeah, he hits for 5 with the Angel, recasts the Thrag Tusk, moves himself into very safe damage range.
It looks like Aaron, I believe, has a Searing Spear in his hand, so maybe that was his plan, attack into the Angel with Spear up to get first strike through. And a little bit of damage, of course, with Rancor's Trample, but as is, looks like he's fallen pretty far behind. Joe's going to be able to win this race without doing too many tricks, and we know he has an Abrupt Decay. Yeah. He actually has a trick.
Joe can just ignore the Boros Reckoner and, swing back with his own creatures.
Yeah.
He's ahead on life, and he's ahead on power.
If anything happens to go haywire, his Abrupt Decay can throw a nice wrench in the works for Aaron. If he has, any other creatures, then also he's in great shape. And he still has that Unbarrow Rights in the graveyard.
So, no creatures in his yard for the Unbarrow Rights, but his hand, he has Faithless Looting. Casting Faithless Looting, he draws a Grisly Salvage and a Temple Garden. It looks like he has a pair of Abrupt Decays. He's going to discard a land and another land. So he's left with just spells, Salvage, Abrupt Decay, and a fair amount of power on the board.
Aaron draws. Nothing that stops that Angel in his hand.
No answer to a flyer. And just 1 card. You would think Aaron actually does not run Celestia Charm in his deck, so he actually does not have an answer to the flyer.
Abrupt Decay on Boros Reckoner is enough to convince him to scoop it up, and they move on to game 3.
That's 2 pretty quick games here from Aaron and Joe. Aaron winning the first one off the back of Gore Clan Rampager and Advent of the Worm, and Joe responding with the turn 4 Angel that his deck's, or turn 5 Angel that his deck's capable of.
Angel of Serenity on turn 4. I feel like they put it at 7 mana because that was more the speed they expected people to be casting it at, right?
Actually, to be fair, for a mulligan to 5, Aaron had a pretty good start. He had a 1-drop, 2 Voice of Resurgences. Joe with a pretty heads-up play. you know, the real pivotal point of the game was when he was able to use those lingering souls to turn both the voices into tokens and then sweep them with the angel.
Yeah, that was definitely the turning point for Aaron. It just worked out not very well for him.
Yeah,
if Joe hadn't had such a fast angel, if he'd even had one on, like, say, turn 5, might not have been enough, actually.
So it looks like, would it be fair for you to say that a lot of this matchup is about how fast Joe can get out an Angel of Serenity? It doesn't seem like Aaron is very well equipped to deal with it at all.
Yeah, Aaron has very few trumps to Angel of Serenity. Being able to, you know, perhaps post Angel of Serenity stick a Volcanic Strength is one of the only ways I can even think of, or maybe just get Joe low enough that he can be Boros Charmed or Searing Spear to death. Of course, you know, with Thragtusk in Joe's deck, that's going to be very difficult to do. So I think that he really wants to, you know, have an aggressive start like the one he had in that game. Just, you know, get in for a lot of damage and hope that Joe doesn't pull off the turn 4 nuts.
Yeah.
Joe has a few different nut draws, though. As we mentioned, you know, the Boros Reckoner Blasphemous Act interaction, that can also deal a lot of damage.
Right. One of the things I think Aaron does have going for him is because his deck is playing cards like Advent of the Worm, Luxodon Smiter, and Gore-Clan Rampager, he gets to somewhat dodge the bullet that is Boros Reckoner. You know, Joe's playing that card to make himself better against aggro, and I'm not sure it makes him very much... I'm not sure it really improves his matchup against Aaron's Naya deck.
I don't think it does significantly. It's better than, you know, Trained Armament.
Right. It's obviously good. It's obviously you know, good against the Dryad Militants and Strangleroot Geists.
Yep.
But outside of that, it's for them. You know, it's a pretty fair card.
Yep. As for Aaron, it's a little bit better in his deck as it can, you know, get through opposing Reckoners and Thragtusks, forces Joe into some awkward spots.
Right. Sometimes it just hits a Thragtusk and deals 5. Like,
Yep.
it's very hard to kill a Boros Reckoner without taking a lot of damage. The only way Joe can do that is with Abrupt Decays.
Playing against a deck that's capable of, you know, dishing out a lot of damage to the face with things like Boros Charm and Searing Spear makes those Thragtusk on Boros Reckoner blocks all the more awkward. You just don't know. Is he going to first strike me out of the way, or is he going to Lava Axe me?
Right. So both players drawing. Remember, the last game we had Aaron on 5 cards and Joe on 6. Game 1 was a pair of 7s with Aaron on the play, and it looks like Aaron is going to be going down on cards again.
It's rough. I mean, he is, you know, on the Forest Boros Reckoner deck, so
right.
We have to take into consideration.
There are going to be some hands that are pretty rough. So
this deck is not free.
Right. And I mean, to be fair, it's not actually a color issue, I think, for his deck. You know, there's only 2 lands that don't contribute toward Boros Reckoner, and that's the 2 forests. When you think about Strangleroot Geist, there's only 4 lands in the deck that don't contribute towards Strangleroot Geist. That's the 4 Sacred Foundries. So for the most part, I think his lands actually do what he's trying to make them do. And he's not paying the price in a bad mana base. He's paying the price and he's going to have to start every game on about 16 life.
Yeah, that's also true. I think it's fair to just associate both of those things as, like, costs to playing the deck. Obviously, Aaron is willing to pay those costs, and it's paid off for him.
Yeah.
With, you know, 2 really strong tournament starts in a row.
Yeah, it's interesting when you play a good deck with an aggressive mana base. One of the things when I design decks, I really like designing mana bases, and I usually demand more of a mana base than demand a lot of a mana base. You have to think about it as, do you want to lose your percentages of castability, or do you want to lose your life points? A lot of the time.
Aaron losing some life points now. Turn 1 Stomping Ground into Experiment 1.
We see
Blood Crypt for Joe Bass.
See a Blood Crypt back from Joe. No turn 1 play, but his deck does not have turn 1 plays. So
good start for Aaron. He's got that Strangleroot Geist we mentioned. It is off a Forest, though, so we know there won't be a turn 3 Boros Reckoner.
Right, the Resurrection appears to be, he has Sacred Foundry, and it looks like a couple of follow-up plays.
Yep.
And
I saw at least a Rampager, so blocking's going to be tough for Joe.
Right, what he's got to be worried about with this draw is that Joe may have a Boros Reckoner of his own. That would probably be the card he least wants to see on the other side of the table.
I agree to some extent, but that Rampager he's got, kind of lets him get a little bit past it.
Speaking of Boros Reckoners, the Grisly Salvage on Unstep by Joe hits a pair of Reckoners, a pair of Mulchos, and a Thragtusk. No land, so hopefully he wasn't looking for a land, and I don't believe he was. So he gets an option between the 5-drop and the 3-drop.
Yeah, his hand appears filled with land. I can see at least a Shrine and a Stomping Ground. He's going to take that 3-drop, and I imagine he's going to take 2 if he
the real
have
question,
else in cast.
all the lands in his hand are shock lands right now. Joe already down to 12. That is a bit of a liability. And he's going to go to 10 to cast Boros Reckoner with Godless Shrine.
Yep.
I see a Searing Spear going to the dome. Joe knocked down to 7. He's going to swing both. You know, and Joe, you have to be a little scared. Aaron double Gore-Clan Rampagers that card.
Wow.
And I like the speed with which Aaron, you know, Joe made the Reckoner, and Aaron, the speed with which Aaron knew, okay, now you're dead. I have you.
Oh, he'd been counting that for a turn and a half. So 4 plus 4.
Yep, and we see a turn 4 kill on the Mull to 6 for Aaron Barich.
Yep.
Very strong deck. And at 7-0, Aaron makes back-to-back top 8s, almost certainly here in Dallas.
Most impressive.
All right, for Joe in his 4-color Reanimator deck, he's going to get another try at making it into the top 8 next round.